She paused, holding her microscope halfway to the table. Talk about what specific topic? Anything. Everything. What was it like growing up in the ethereal collective? What do you think about space? Do you ever wonder about things that have nothing to do with work? Hannah's logical mind struggled to process this. Childhood experiences served no current function unless they contained relevant training data. Space was simply the environment they worked in, and wondering about non-work topics seemed like cognitive malfunction. My developmental period was optimized for educational efficiency, she replied carefully. Space is a vacuum containing various celestial bodies and energy patterns. I do not understand the concept of wandering without purpose. Jiho leaned back against the bench. Okay, let me try differently. Look out that window. What do you see? I observe 16 visible stars, 3 planets, 1 asteroid cluster, and various cosmic dust particles reflecting station lighting. That's not what I meant. His voice was gentle. Don't analyze it. Just look at it. How does it make you feel? Feel. Hannah's people didn't make decisions based on emotions. Feelings were chemical reactions that interfered with logical thinking. But as she stared out at the swirling nebula in the distance, something strange happened in her chest. The colors seemed to shift and dance in ways that had nothing to do with gravitational forces or stellar radiation. The visual patterns create unexpected neural responses, she admitted slowly. My brain chemistry fluctuates when observing the nebula's color variations. This seems inefficient. That's not inefficient, Jiho said softly. That's wonder. That's beauty affecting you. Over the following weeks, these recreation deck meetings became routine. Hannah still brought her equipment, but she found herself using it less and less. Instead, she discovered herself drawn into conversations about dreams, fears, favorite memories, and philosophical questions that had no clear answers. She learned that Jiho had wanted to be an artist before becoming a scientist, that he missed the sound of rain on his childhood home, that he sometimes stayed awake at night wondering if there was intelligent life in galaxies they hadn't discovered yet. Indig's return. She found herself sharing thoughts she had never spoken aloud. How the silence of space sometimes felt lonely. How she wondered what music would sound like if her people created it for joy instead of communication. How looking at stars made her feel both infinitely small and somehow connected to everything. This is highly illogical, she told him one evening as they watched a distant supernova's light reach their window. Yeah, Jiho agreed, smiling. Isn't it great? The maintenance alarm in Lab 3 started beeping at exactly 800 hours, just as Hannah was beginning her daily sample analysis. The atmospheric recycler needed a filter replacement, a routine task that required 2 people to safely access the upper compartments. I'll grab the ladder, Jiho called out, already moving toward the storage closet. Can you get the replacement filters from the supply cabinet? Hannah nodded, retrieving the cylindrical filters with her usual methodical precision. She had performed this maintenance procedure 17 times since arriving at the station. It was simple, predictable, and completely safe. What happened next was anything but predictable. As they worked to remove the old filter housing, the space became cramped. Jiho stretched upward to reach the upper bolts, while Hannah steadied the component from below. The angle was awkward, requiring them to work in close proximity. Almost got it, Jiho muttered, adjusting his grip on the wrench. Just need to... He leaned further, his arm extending past her shoulder. That's when it happened. His forearm brushed against hers as he reached for the stubborn bolt. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds, skin against skin, warm and completely accidental. For humans, it would have been meaningless, barely worth noticing. For Hannah, it was like being struck by lightning. Her bioelectric field, normally a steady blue glow beneath her silver skin, suddenly surged and flickered. Bright pulses of energy raced along her neural pathways, visible as golden threads beneath her translucent flesh. Her antennae snapped straight up, quivering like tuning forks. Oh, sorry about that, Jiho said casually, not noticing her reaction as he finally loosened the bolt. These compartments are always too small for proper maintenance access. Hannah couldn't respond. Her vocal cords had somehow forgotten how to function, Her entire nervous system was experiencing what her people would classify as a critical malfunction. Electrical impulses fired randomly through her body, creating sensations she had no words to describe. The warmth from that brief contact lingered on her arm like a phantom touch. Her skin continued to tingle minutes after Jiho had moved away. Most disturbing of all, her logical mind kept replaying the moment over and over, analyzing every millisecond of the contact for reasons she couldn't understand. "Hand me that next filter, would you?" Jiho asked, completely unaware that he had just caused a complete system crash in his alien colleague. Hana mechanically passed him the filter, her movement stiff and uncertain. Her bioelectric field was still fluctuating wildly, cycling through colors she didn't know she could produce. She hoped he wouldn't notice the light show happening beneath her skin. "Thanks," he said, and their fingers brushed briefly as he took the filter from her hands. Another surge, another cascade of inexplicable sensations. Her antennae drooped as her processing power seemed to redirect itself toward analyzing these strange new neural patterns. This was a problem. A serious problem. Over the following days, Hana found herself hyper-aware of Jiho's physical presence in ways that defied all logic. When he handed her tools, she was careful to avoid skin contact, but even the near misses sent her bioelectric field into irregular patterns. When he stood close enough for her to sense his body heat, her concentration scattered like solar particles in a magnetic storm. She ran diagnostic after diagnostic on her own biology, searching for malfunctions in her nervous system. Everything appeared normal, yet the system errors continued whenever Jiho was nearby. The worst part was how her traitorous mind kept seeking out opportunities for accidental contact. She found herself working closer to him than necessary, positioning herself where brief touches might occur naturally. Her logical brain screamed warnings about this illogical behavior, but her body seemed to have developed its own agenda. "Are you feeling all right?" Jiho asked one afternoon, noticing her distracted state. "Your skin patterns look different today. More colorful?" Hana glanced down at herself in horror. Her bioelectric field was cycling through warm golden hues. Instead of its usual cool blue, she was literally glowing with emotions she couldn't name or control. "Minor calibration error," she lied, desperately trying to dim her natural luminescence. Nothing significant, but it was significant. These system errors were rewiring something fundamental in her consciousness, and she had no idea how to make them stop. Worse yet, she was beginning to suspect she didn't want them to stop. The warning klaxons started screaming at 13:47 hours, their harsh wail cutting through the usual hum of station operations. Hana looked up from her microscope as read emergency. Lights began flashing throughout Lab 3. "Attention all personnel," the station's AI announced in its calm, automated voice. "Massive solar flare detected. Radiation levels exceeding safety parameters. Initiate emergency protocols immediately." Jiho was across the lab, sealing biological samples into protective storage. His movements were quick but controlled, the kind of practiced efficiency that came from emergency drills. "Class X flare," he called out, checking his handheld scanner. "The magnetic shields are already fluctuating. We've got maybe 3 minutes before they fail completely." Hana's training kicked in automatically. Solar flares of this magnitude could cook organic tissue within minutes once the station's protective barriers collapsed. Standard protocol required immediate evacuation to the reinforced emergency shelters in the station's core. She began securing her equipment with mechanical precision, following the evacuation checklist burned into her memory. Her people were excellent in crisis situations because they removed emotion from the equation entirely. Logic, procedure, efficiency. "Hana, forget the equipment." Jiho's voice carried an urgency that made her antennae twitch. "The radiation readings are spiking faster than predicted. We need to move now." The station shuddered as another wave of solar particles struck the weakening magnetic barriers. Emergency lighting flickered, and somewhere in the distance Hana could hear the ominous hum of overloading power systems. She grabbed her emergency kit and headed for the exit, but stopped when she realized Jiho wasn't beside her. Turning back, she saw him still at his workstation, frantically typing commands into his computer terminal. The biological samples he explained without looking up. If the lab loses power, 3 months of research on the Kepler bacterium will be destroyed. Just give me 30 more seconds to transfer the data to secure storage. 30 seconds we do not have, Hana replied logically. Survival takes priority over research data. This is basic protocol. Almost got it, Jiho muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. These bacteria could be the key to terraforming dead planets. I can't let that work disappear. The lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in eerie red light. The station's hull groaned under the assault of high-energy particles, and Hana could hear the crackling sound of electronics beginning to fail. Jiho, we must leave now. Her voice carried a sharp edge of panic she had never heard from herself before. Got it. He slammed the final command key and spun toward the exit. But as they rushed through the doorway, the station lurched violently. A support beam, weakened by the electromagnetic pulse, came loose from the ceiling with a metallic shriek. Time seemed to slow down as Hana watched the heavy beam falling directly toward her position. Her analytical mind calculated trajectory, mass and impact force in microseconds. She had enough time to dodge left, but her legs felt frozen. Then something slammed into her from the side, sending her tumbling safely away from the beam's path. She hit the corridor wall hard, her shoulder striking metal, but she was alive. Jiho wasn't as lucky. The beam had clipped his leg as he pushed her clear, pinning him against the floor. His face was pale, but his eyes immediately found hers. You hurt? He asked, trying to push himself up despite the weight crushing his limb. Hana stared at him in complete shock. He had deliberately put himself in danger to save her, not because of duty or protocol or logical calculation of her value to the mission. He had risked his own survival for hers without hesitation, without thought of reward or benefit. You are injured because of me, she whispered, her bioelectric field fluctuating wildly. This violates all logical survival patterns. Why would you sacrifice your safety for mine? Even trapped and in pain, Jiho managed a small smile. Because I care about you more than I care about myself. The words hit her like another solar flare, but this one struck directly at her consciousness. Her people had no concept for this kind of selfless action. Love, as her species understood it, was about genetic compatibility and mutual benefit. But what Jiho had just demonstrated was something entirely different, something that made her chest feel like it might explode with emotions she had no names for. Working together, they managed to free his leg and reach the emergency shelter just as the station's shields failed completely. But even as the radiation storm raged outside, all Hana could think about was the moment when someone had chosen her life over his own, for no logical reason except that he cared. Hana sat in her quarters at 300 hours, surrounded by data screens, displaying complex equations and behavioral analysis charts. Her usually pristine workspace looked like a tornado had swept through it. Papers covered every surface, filled with calculations that led nowhere and theories that crumbled under examination. For the past 6 days, since the solar flare incident, she had been trying to scientifically understand what had happened to her mind. The logical framework that had guided her entire existence was failing her when she needed it most. She pulled up her latest analysis on the primary screen. Hypothesis 847. Human subject. Jiho exhibits protective behavior to ensure continued research. Partnership productivity. But even as she typed it, she knew it was wrong. Jiho had risked his life for her when doing so actually threatened their research goals. His injury had delayed their work by days. There was no logical benefit to his actions. She deleted the hypothesis and started again. Hypothesis 848. Protective behavior indicates territorial possession. Subject Jiho views Dr. Hana as valuable resource requiring protection. That didn't work either. Jiho had never shown any signs of claiming ownership over her or her work. He consistently respected her independence and often deferred to her expertise. Delete. Start over. Hypothesis 849. Irrational human behavior stems from primitive survival instincts incorrectly triggered by non-threatening situation. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. This explanation felt even more hollow than the others. There had been nothing primitive about Jiho's choice. It had been deliberate, conscious, and completely selfless. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the small window that showed the starfield beyond the station. Her reflection stared back at her, silver skin still flickering with the unstable bioelectric patterns that had plagued her for weeks. Computer, access ethereal collective database on altruistic behavior patterns. Accessing, the AI replied. 17 entries found, all classified under beneficial cooperation or genetic survival advantages. She had read them all before. Every example of apparent selflessness in her species' records ultimately served some biological or social purpose. Parents protected offspring to ensure genetic continuation. Individuals sacrificed for the group to maintain collective survival. Even acts of apparent kindness were calculated investments in future reciprocal benefits, but Jiho's actions fit none of these categories. Computer, define love according to human databases. Love, a complex emotion characterized by deep affection, care and attachment to another being, often involving self-sacrifice without expectation of return. Without expectation of return. The phrase made her antennae droop. Her entire species operated on systems of expected returns. Every action had purpose, every decision calculated benefit. The concept of giving without receiving was like asking her to understand a mathematical equation where 2 + 2 equaled purple. She returned to her desk and pulled up her personal behavioral analysis. The data was disturbing. Over the past month, her efficiency ratings had dropped by 23%. She spent 34% more time in recreational activities with no productive output. Her sleep cycles were irregular, often interrupted by what humans called dreams, about scenarios that would never occur. Most concerning of all, she had begun making decisions based on factors her people would classify as emotional contamination. Yesterday, she had chosen to eat lunch with Jiho instead of attending an important research symposium broadcast from the collective homeworld. When pressed to explain this choice, she could only say it had felt right. Felt right. As if feelings were valid data points for decision-making, she accessed her personal communication logs and composed a message to her supervisor on the homeworld. Respected Coordinator Zen, I am experiencing significant cognitive dysfunction that may compromise mission objectives. Request immediate recall for neural recalibration. Her finger hovered over the send button. Going home would mean never seeing Jiho again, never having those illogical conversations on the recreation deck, never experiencing the strange warmth that flooded her system when he smiled at her. The thought made her bioelectric field flare with colors she was still learning to interpret. Pain, she realized. The idea of leaving caused her actual pain. She deleted the message. Standing up again, she walked to her small collection of personal items. There, beside her official collective insignia and her scientific awards, sat the preserved cherry blossom Jiho had given her weeks ago. She picked up the stasis-preserved flower and held it up to the light. It was beautiful, serving no function except to exist and be appreciated. Like her growing feelings for Jiho, it defied every logical framework she knew. Maybe, she thought, as she watched the delicate petals shimmer in the artificial light. Some things in the universe weren't meant to be understood through logic alone. Maybe some things were meant to be felt. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Hannah spent 3 hours that morning preparing for what she had classified as Operation Cultural Integration. She had analyzed dozens of recorded human interactions, studying speech patterns, facial expressions and social cues with the same intensity she normally reserved for cellular biology. Her first attempt came during their usual coffee break in the station's small cafeteria. "Jiho," she announced, approaching his table with measured steps. "I have observed that humans frequently exchange positive commentary about physical appearance as a bonding mechanism. Therefore, I wish to inform you that your facial structure exhibits pleasing symmetry, and your hair follicles display optimal shine and texture consistent with healthy keratin production." Jiho nearly choked on his coffee. Thank you, Hannah. That's very scientific of you." She pulled out a small data pad and made a note. "Your response indicates moderate success, However, your facial expression suggests the compliment delivery method requires adjustment. You're taking notes on complimenting me? Jiho asked, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Efficiency requires data tracking, she replied seriously. Human social interactions appear randomly distributed, but I believe there must be underlying patterns that can be optimized. The next day, she attempted what her research had identified as casual conversation. She found Jiho in Lab 2, calibrating the atmospheric sensors. "Greetings, Jiho," she began, reading from prepared notes on her datapad. "How are you experiencing this current time period? I am functioning within normal parameters and find the weather simulation to be adequately pleasant for biological comfort." Jiho looked up from his instruments. "The weather simulation?" "Yes. Humans frequently discuss meteorological conditions as conversation initiators. The station's environmental controls are currently set to 22.3 degrees Celsius with 45% humidity, which falls within optimal comfort ranges for most Earth-origin species." "Hannah, are you reading that from notes?" She glanced down at her pad. "I have prepared several topic categories for casual discourse. Would you prefer to discuss recreational activities? I have documented 17 conversation starters related to sports, entertainment, and leisure pursuits." Jiho set down his tools and turned to face her fully. "What are you trying to do?" "I am attempting to reciprocate your social bonding behaviors," she explained, as if it were obvious. "You have consistently engaged in non-productive but apparently meaningful interactions with me. Logic suggests I should respond with similar behaviors to maintain social equilibrium." "Social equilibrium?" "Yes. Our partnership efficiency has improved by 15% since these casual interactions began. I wish to contribute to this positive trend through appropriate cultural participation." Jiho's expression softened. "Hannah, you don't need to study how to be my friend. You already are." She blinked slowly, processing this statement. "But I have observed clear patterns in human friendship protocols, gift exchanges, recreational time allocation, emotional support provision, and regular status inquiries. I am attempting to fulfill these requirements systematically. Is that why you gave me that perfectly balanced meal yesterday, with the nutritional breakdown card attached?" "Humans often share food as bonding activity," she confirmed. "I calculated your optimal nutritional needs and prepared accordingly. The card was included for transparency regarding ingredient composition and caloric values." Jiho started laughing, a warm sound that made her bioelectric field fluctuate pleasantly. "And the 15-minute presentation about why you appreciate my work ethic?" "Emotional support provision," she said proudly. "I researched appropriate encouraging statements and organized them into a logical sequence with supporting evidence. You made PowerPoint slides about my good qualities. Visual aids enhance information retention," she explained. "I included graphs showing your productivity improvements and comparative analysis with average human performance metrics." Jiho walked over to her, still smiling. "Hannah, that was the sweetest, most bizarre presentation anyone has ever given me." Her antennae perked up with interest. Sweetness is a taste sensation. How can a presentation exhibit flavor characteristics? It's a human expression. It means your gesture was kind and touching, even if it was delivered like a scientific conference. "Ah." She made another note. "Human language contains numerous non-literal applications. This complicates casual conversation algorithms significantly." "Maybe that's the point," Jiho said gently. "Conversations aren't supposed to be algorithms. They're supposed to be organic, unpredictable, real." Hannah considered this. But unpredictability reduces efficiency. Sometimes the best things in life are inefficient. She looked at him for a long moment, her bioelectric patterns shifting to softer, warmer hues. "Like the time you spend bringing me flowers with no practical purpose?" "Exactly like that. And the recreational deck conversations that produce no measurable outcomes." "Right again." Her skin brightened with understanding. "Perhaps I have been approaching this incorrectly. Instead of optimizing human social patterns, I should simply engage naturally." "Now you're getting it." The next morning, Hannah approached Jiho without her datapad. without prepared statements and without calculated objectives. "Good morning," she said simply. "I hope you slept well." "Much better," Jiho replied, his smile genuine and warm. "How did you sleep?" "I experienced pleasant dreams about cherry blossoms and starlight," she admitted, surprised by her own honesty. "That sounds beautiful." It was, she agreed, and for the first time her attempt at human interaction felt completely natural. The realization hit Hana at exactly 16:42 hours on a Tuesday, while she was watching Jiho explain orbital mechanics to a group of visiting students via video call. He was animated, passionate, drawing diagrams in the air with his hands as he described how planets dance around their stars. His eyes lit up when a young student asked a particularly clever question. That's when it happened. Her bioelectric field suddenly blazed with colors she had never produced before, brilliant golds and warm purples that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her chest felt tight, her breathing shallow, and her logical mind finally identified what her body had been trying to tell her for weeks. She was in love, not the calculated partnership bonding of her species, not the genetic compatibility assessment her people called affection. This was something entirely different, something that made her want to spend every moment ensuring Jiho's happiness, even if it meant sacrificing her own logical frameworks. The sire. Problem was how to tell him. For 3 days, Hana worked on what she privately called Project Emotional Declaration. She researched human romantic confession protocols, studied love poetry, analyzed marriage proposals, and even watched something called romantic comedies that left her more confused than ever. But she was still ethereal collective. Her people had formal procedures for everything, including relationship declarations. Surely she could combine both approaches into something comprehensible. On Friday evening, she asked Jiho to meet her on the recreation deck. She arrived early, carrying a data pad, with her carefully prepared statement and a small gift wrapped in regulation-issue protective packaging. "You seem nervous," Jiho observed when he arrived. "Your skin patterns are doing something I've never seen before." Hana looked down at herself. Her bioelectric field was cycling through rapid bursts of color like a malfunctioning Christmas tree. "I have an important communication to deliver," she announced formally. "Okay," Jiho said, settling onto the bench across from her. "I'm listening." Hana stood up, straightened her shoulders, and began reading from her data pad. Hana blinked her large dark eyes slowly. In her culture, personal inquiries about physical condition were reserved for medical professionals during scheduled health assessments. She pulled out her data pad and began typing notes. "Your concern for my physiological state suggests either a medical emergency or establishment of hierarchical dominance," she said matter-of-factly. "However, I detect no immediate threats to warrant such behavior. Please clarify your intentions." Jiho's smile faltered for just a moment before returning even brighter. "Oh, I'm just being friendly. Here, let me show you to your quarters first. You can settle in, and then maybe we can grab some coffee and go over our research schedule." He reached for one of her travel cases, and Hana immediately stepped back. Physical contact with belongings typically indicated either theft attempt or territorial claiming among most species she had studied. "I am capable of transporting my own equipment," she stated, clutching her case closer. "Your offer to consume beverages together suggests either a nutritional assessment requirement or a bonding ritual. Which category does this coffee ceremony fall under?" Jiho paused, tilting his head slightly. "It's just coffee. You know, something warm to drink while we talk and get to know each other better." Hana's typing intensified. Getting to know someone better served no obvious survival function. Her people exchanged biographical data files and genetic compatibility reports when cooperation was required. This human approach seemed incredibly inefficient. "I have brought my complete academic records and health documentation for review," she offered, producing a small crystal drive. "This should provide all necessary information for optimal work partnership." "That's great, but I was thinking more about personal stuff, like what do you enjoy doing in your free time? What kind of music do you like? Do you have any hobbies?" Hana stared at him, as if he had just asked her to solve quantum mechanics using only her feet. Free time was time not spent on productive activities, which seemed counterproductive to survival. Music served no biological function unless used for mating displays or territorial warnings, and hobbies were simply inefficient uses of energy. I engage in optimal rest cycles and mandatory skill maintenance, she replied carefully. I am uncertain why you require data about recreational waste of resources. Jiho laughed, a sound that made her skin tingle in a way she had never experienced before. Her bioelectric field fluctuated slightly, and she made another note about possible equipment malfunction in the station's atmosphere. Come on, let me show you around. I think you're going to find working with humans a lot more interesting than your textbook suggested. As they walked through the station's corridors, Hannah continued documenting what she was certain were primitive social dominance displays. She had no idea that her research partner was simply trying to make her feel welcome, and she definitely had no idea that his genuine kindness was about to turn her perfectly ordered world completely upside down. The strange human behavior started on Hannah's third day at the station. She was reviewing biological samples in Lab 7 when Jiho appeared at her workstation carrying a steaming cup. Thought you might want to try some real Earth coffee, he said, setting it down beside her microscope. It's from a little farm in Colombia. The beans are grown at high altitude, which gives them this amazing flavor. Hannah examined the dark liquid suspiciously. You are offering me a foreign substance without requesting compensation. This suggests either poisoning attempt or establishment of debt obligation. What do you require in return? Jiho blinked. Nothing. I just thought you might enjoy it. She made detailed notes about this peculiar resource distribution. Among her people, gifts were only given during formal ceremonies or to establish complex social contracts. Random food sharing indicated either courtship rituals or territorial boundary negotiations. Since Jiho showed no signs of romantic interest, this had to be some form of primitive trade system. The next morning, she found a small crystalline structure on her desk. It was a data crystal containing Earth's complete geological survey of the Andromeda sector. I noticed you were interested in mineral formations, Jiho explained when she confronted him. This has some really cool stuff about crystal cave systems on Earth. Figured you might find it useful for your research. Hannah's antennae twitched rapidly. 2 unsolicited gifts in 2 days. This was definitely territorial marking behavior. He was probably trying to claim her workspace as part of his domain. I understand, she said formally. You are establishing ownership boundaries through gift placement. I will relocate my equipment to avoid territorial conflicts. What? No, Hannah, I'm not trying to claim your space. I just like sharing interesting things with people I work with. That evening, Hannah decided to respond appropriately to these obvious trade overtures. She had studied human nutritional requirements extensively and calculated the optimal dietary supplements for Jiho's metabolism. She also prepared a comprehensive efficiency report analyzing his work patterns and suggesting improvements. The next morning, she placed both items on his desk with scientific precision. I have provided nutritional optimization compounds and productivity enhancement data, she announced. This should adequately compensate for your previous resource investments. Jiho picked up the nutrition packet and examined it. The label read, Optimal Protein Synthesis Enhancement Formula for Human Male, age 28-32, Moderate Activity Level. The efficiency report was 12 pages long and included a detailed breakdown of his bathroom break frequency. Hannah, this is very thorough, he said slowly. But you don't need to pay me back for coffee and a data crystal. All resource exchanges require balanced reciprocity, she replied matter-of-factly. Your behavior indicates establishment of trade partnership. I have calculated exact equivalent values. The confusion deepened when Jiho brought her a small, preserved flower from Earth the following week. It was a cherry blossom, delicate and pink, suspended in a clear stasis field. My grandmother always said cherry blossoms represent the beauty of temporary things, he explained. I thought you might appreciate something from my home planet. Hannah stared at the flower for a long time. It served no nutritional purpose, provided no useful data, and contributed nothing to their research. Yet something about its delicate beauty made her chest feel strange and warm. "This biological specimen has no practical application," she said, but her voice was softer than usual. "Why do you waste resources on non-functional items?" Jiho smiled, that same warm smile that made her skin tingle. "Because some things are valuable just for being beautiful." That night, Hannah placed the flower beside her sleeping pod and found herself staring at it for much longer than was logically necessary. She was beginning to suspect that human resource exchange patterns were far more complex than her databases had indicated. "Hey Hannah, want to hang out on the recreation deck after work?" Jiho asked casually as they finished cataloging the day's specimens. "We could just relax and talk for a while." Hannah looked up from her datapad, antennae twitching with confusion. "You wish to schedule additional research discussion? What topic requires recreational deck environment for optimal analysis?" "No." "Research," Jiho laughed. "Just hanging out. Casual conversation." She stared at him blankly. Casual conversation served no measurable purpose. Among her people, communication occurred only when information needed to be exchanged or problems required solving. The concept of talking without specific objectives seemed like a massive waste of energy. "I will bring appropriate equipment for environmental analysis," she decided. "The recreation deck's atmospheric conditions may provide interesting data." That evening, Hannah arrived at the recreation deck carrying 3 sensor devices, 2 data pads and a portable microscope. The deck was a large, comfortable space with viewing windows showing the star field outside. Soft lighting created a warm atmosphere that most species found soothing. Jiho was already there, sitting on one of the curved benches facing the window. He looked relaxed, almost lazy by her standards. When he saw her equipment, his eyebrows raised. "Planning to study the deck?" he asked with amusement. "You requested recreational deck meeting. I assumed scientific purpose." She began setting up her sensors. "These readings will document atmospheric variations and electromagnetic fluctuations." During our discussion, "Hannah, we're just here to talk, no science required." Dr. Hannah stepped off the transport shuttle and into Research Station Omega-7, her silver skin shimmering under the artificial lights. Her people, the Ethereal Collective, had sent her here to study alien biology alongside a human partner. She had prepared for this moment by memorizing 47 different greeting protocols from various species across the galaxy. What she had not prepared for was Dr. Jiho. The moment the airlock doors hissed open, a young human male with messy, black hair and kind eyes practically bounced toward her. His face was doing something strange, stretching upward at the corners in what her databanks identified as a smile. Among her people, such facial contortions usually indicated digestive problems. "Dr. Hannah, welcome to Omega-7. Jiho's voice carried an energy that made her antennae twitch. "How was your journey? You must be exhausted after traveling through 3 star systems." Dr. Jiho Kim, pursuant to Ethereal Collective Regulation 847.3, regarding interpersonal relationship declarations, I hereby formally notify you of my intention to pursue romantic partnership status. This declaration has been processed through appropriate emotional analysis protocols and deemed genuine and lasting. Jiho's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing. "Furthermore," Hannah continued, "in accordance with human customs as documented in my research, I wish to express that you make my heart perform irregular beating patterns in a physiologically impossible but metaphorically meaningful way. Your presence causes my digestive system to experience sensations comparable to hosting a colony of butterflies, which I understand to be a positive indicator." "Hannah," Jiho started, but she held up a hand. "I am not finished. Section B of this declaration addresses compatibility assessment. Our genetic markers are obviously incompatible for reproduction. But this does not diminish my desire to share recreational activities, food consumption events, and sleeping proximity arrangements with you for an extended duration, possibly measuring in decades." She flipped to the next page, her voice becoming less formal and more rushed. "Additionally, I must inform you that your safety and happiness have become priority objectives in my personal programming, superseding even mission requirements and logical self-preservation protocols. This is highly irregular behavior for my species, but feels correct is insufficient terminology. It feels like discovering a new form of mathematics that makes the universe more beautiful. Jiho was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite identify. In conclusion, she said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, I believe I have experienced what humans classify as falling in love with you, though the gravitational metaphor seems inadequate. It feels less like falling and more like ascending, like learning to fly. She set down the datapad and picked up the wrapped gift. I have also prepared a token of affection, as per documented human courtship protocols. Jiho unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a small crystal sculpture that seemed to capture starlight within its faceted surface. But it wasn't just any crystal. It was a piece of her own shed biocrystalline matrix, transformed through her natural processes into something beautiful. I grew this myself, she explained shyly. It contains traces of my bioelectric signature. In my culture, sharing biocrystal is significant. It means I trust you with a literal piece of myself. Jiho held the crystal up to the light, watching. It sparkled with internal fire. When he looked back at her, his eyes were soft and warm. Hana, that was the most beautifully weird declaration of love I've ever heard. Is that positive feedback? She asked hopefully. Instead of answering with words, Jiho stood up, stepped closer, and gently took her hands in his. I love you too, he said simply. All of you. The scientific part, the confused part, the part that makes PowerPoint presentations about feelings. I love how your mind works, even when it makes simple things wonderfully complicated. Her bioelectric field exploded in brilliant golds and warm blues, so bright that the entire recreation deck seemed to glow. So this means our relationship status is now officially updated, she asked, her voice filled with hope and lingering confusion. Jiho laughed and kissed her forehead gently. Yes, Dr. Hana, we're officially in love. 6 months after their official relationship status update, Hana and Jiho had created something entirely new, a love language that belonged to neither of their species, but somehow perfectly fit them both. Their morning routine was a perfect example. Jiho would wake up first and prepare coffee exactly the way Hana had calculated she preferred it. Optimal temperature, precise caffeine content, with the addition of earth honey that she had discovered triggered pleasant neural responses. In tea's return, Hana would present him with a daily efficiency report that had evolved from clinical analysis into something resembling poetry. Today's productivity forecast: high probability of success with 73% chance of spontaneous laughter. Recommended activities include sample analysis, recreational conversation, and approximately 4.7 minutes of what you call stealing kisses during lunch break, she would announce, her bioelectric field glowing warm amber with affection. Their colleagues had initially been baffled by the relationship. Dr. Martinez from the botany lab couldn't understand why Jiho seemed happy receiving what looked like technical readouts as love notes. Dr. Park from engineering was mystified by Hana's habit of giving Jiho small, functionally useless gifts that he treasured like rare artifacts. But gradually, their hybrid approach began to make sense to everyone around them. More importantly, it was working. You know what I realized, Jiho said one evening as they sat on the recreation deck, sharing what had become their traditional end-of-day stargazing session. We're basically creating a new form of communication. Hana looked up from her datapad, where she was documenting the emotional significance of the constellation patterns they were observing. Explain this theory. You show love through analysis and optimization. I show love through spontaneous gestures and emotional expression. Instead of trying to change each other, we've learned to translate. Translation protocols, Hana mused, her antennae twitching with interest. Yes, this is accurate. When you bring me flowers, I understand. You are expressing appreciation for beauty without function. When I calculate your optimal nutrition requirements, you understand I am demonstrating care for your well-being. Exactly. We're not speaking the same language, but we're understanding each other perfectly. Their success hadn't gone unnoticed by the broader scientific community. Dr. Irin, the station's xenosociology specialist, had been documenting their relationship dynamics for what she claimed was purely academic interest. But Hana suspected there was more to it. Her suspicions were confirmed when Commander Singh called them into her office the following week. "I've been contacted by both the Ethereal Collective and the United Earth Council," the commander announced, her expression unusually serious. "Your relationship has become something of a case study." Hana's bioelectric field flickered with concern. "Have we violated protocols? Our productivity ratings remain above acceptable parameters." "Quite the opposite," Commander Singh smiled. "Both governments want to understand how you've made this work. Apparently, there have been 17 failed attempts at romantic relationships between humans and Ethereal Collective members over the past century. Yours is the first successful long-term partnership." Jiho reached over and took Hana's hand, a gesture that still sent pleasant electrical surges through her nervous system. "They want to study us? They want to learn from you. The diplomatic implications are significant. If different species can find ways to bridge emotional and logical communication styles, it could revolutionize interspecies cooperation on every level." Over the next several months, Hana and Jiho found themselves accidental ambassadors for interspecies romance. They participated in research studies, gave presentations to diplomatic councils, and even co-authored a paper titled Hybrid Communication Protocols in cross-species romantic partnerships. But the real breakthrough came when Hana was asked to submit a formal report to the Ethereal Collective Council on her experiences with human emotional expression. She spent weeks on the document, analyzing everything she had learned about love, illogic, and the strange mathematics of the heart. Her final conclusion surprised even herself. "After extensive analysis of human emotional patterns and their effects on decision-making, cognitive function, and social cooperation, I must revise fundamental assumptions about intelligence classification. Human emotional responses, previously categorized as primitive and inefficient, actually represent a sophisticated form of consciousness that prioritizes long-term survival through community bonding and individual sacrifice for collective benefit. The apparent illogic of choosing another's happiness over one's own immediate needs creates stronger social structures, enhanced problem-solving through diverse perspectives, and increased adaptability in crisis situations. What we have classified as emotional contamination may actually be the universe's most advanced form of consciousness evolution. Recommendation: immediate integration of emotional education protocols into ethereal collective development programs. The future of intelligent life may depend not on perfecting logic, but on learning to balance reason with what humans call heart. That evening, as she and Jiho watched another binary sunset from their favorite spot on the recreation deck, Hana reflected on how much her world had changed. "Do you think we really created something new?" she asked, her skin glowing soft gold in the starlight. "I think we created something perfect," Jiho replied, pulling her closer. "At least, perfect for us." Hana smiled, a facial expression she had learned to appreciate for its complete lack of logical purpose. "Perfectly imperfect," she agreed, "the most beautiful kind of efficiency."